Joe Budden's co-hosts air out their contract issues with each other. That's right, on the last Patreon episode called We're Civilized Now, Joe Budden and the cast went over the stipulations of their contract, and it was also revealed that Flip and Melissa Ford are a bit at odds over a couple of reasons. But you need to stay tuned to the end of this video to see why. So let's get right into it. This episode starts off with the podcast talking about rights and ownership and permissions that Joe Budden has over the cast since they are signed to the Joe Budden Network. Apparently, there is a 10-episode order of improper improv for Queen's Flip show. Now, improper improv is coming back to Joe Budden's network on October 30th. And it kind of conflicts with Melissa Ford's new show. But what was really interesting was, on top of this, Joe is allegedly working on a hoodie that features Queen's Flip's face. And Queen's Flip was basically arguing that Joe Budden does not have the rights to use his likeness to sell merch. And also, Flip took issue with Joe Budden playing into the narrative that Joe signed him into a bad deal. See, Queen's Flip doesn't like when the narrative goes too far. He often likes to play with other people, but the minute he starts to look like he's on the losing end of a narrative, he gets real sensitive, which is exactly why he's mad at this. That isn't COE, that's real. Then Ish chimes in and jokes and says, if you signed a bad deal with Joe, you signed a bad deal, and it doesn't matter what you think. After that, Flip fires back and says that if he signed a bad deal, then Ish also signed a bad deal himself. Now, is Flip pulling rank on Ish and reminding him that he is the one with the upper hand in this exchange, as he is actually somebody who has a media background and his channel almost has as many subscribers as Joe? Flip then reiterates that he didn't sign any of his rights away, and after that, Flip says that everyone on the show signed a new deal and agreed to the same clause that he did. Now, this was the most fascinating part to me, because Flip revealed that when Ian and Joe were negotiating with Flip, that they told him, hey man, the clause that you're agreeing to is the same clause that everybody else agreed to. So this means a lot of things. This means that the Joe Budden Network might be developing standard issue contracts, and this whole idea that people are signing different deals and getting different things put into their contract is probably a reach, as everybody is agreeing to the same type of rights deal, the same type of contractual obligations, but they're trying to present on air as if they're getting special treatment. This is usually where a network loves to have somebody, hey, we're giving you a good deal, buddy. And then you find out you signed the same thing as everyone else. Maybe some people get paid more than the other, but they're all signing standard issue contracts at the Joe Budden Network. That was the highlight of this episode for me. Joe then makes a joke about seeing Ish sell hoodies and that it sparked the idea for him to sell co-host related merch. Now, this Ish hoodie thing is not a narrative, largely because there is actual proof of Ish being upset that Joe would downplay the value of his merch.
And he's like, yo, you got your own shit on again, blah. Making jokes, being performative. Mm-hmm. Then he like, yo, what's I was like, I don't know, maybe like 150. I said, it's the target price. So he's like, 150? Again, Joe performative. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying? 150, oh, man, you must gonna bring that thing to your house for me or something like that. So I'm like, what's that you got on? I said, what's the hoodie you had on last week? How much that cost? He said, what was it? I started laughing. Balenciaga, $1,300. I said, they came to your house and bought it to you? The bad part is Joe's voice is so loud in the industry that it's taken for granted. Next 4 or 5 days, it was forums on Reddit, on Twitter, on all these shit about should I be charging $150 for my hoodies? Was I upset? I mean, once I saw the aftermath of what him saying did, right. Yeah, I was kind of tight.
And we gotta look at the timing of this. Joe did drop his merch right after Ish rolled out his merch. It was essentially like him saying like, oh man, I don't have any merch out, so the only merch that people can buy that is pod related is Ish. I gotta get out there. So Joe saw everybody making money from the merchandising of being on the Joe Budden podcast, and he was like, "Ah, man, I gotta do that." The timing is just too conspicuous. They then start talking about live shows, and Flip says that if Joe ever does a live tour, he should take him off the bill. This is in response to Joe saying that he's getting the better of Flip in these negotiations. And Joe jokes back and says that he don't even know if a Flip hoodie would sell, so there's no reason for Flip to get upset. Now, that is actually true. I think a lot of people on this show believe that they have some crazy high value, and there's not really a rush to wear a Queens Flip hoodie. I don't get why people are acting as if, oh man, you can't have my rights. Your rights ain't really worth much, especially when it comes to merchandising. Like, I don't think anybody is rushing to wear a Ice hoodie or a Parks hoodie. It's not really a thing. The only person that I think is doing it right is Ish. Ish is just throwing ideas out. He's building brand recognition. Yes, people are like, it's so stupid for you to charge this much for hoodies and all that stuff. But at least he is doing the marketing, the legwork behind it. After that, Flip finally reveals what I long believed and mentions how he brought live streaming to the network and that he had the original idea for Podsgiving. Now, if you go back and look around the time of Podsgiving, you see that Flip was a little bit dejected, demoralized, and seemed to take issue with how Joe was embracing live streaming. At that time, Joe Budden had done live streaming before, but it was more so akin to like webcam streaming, where he would turn on his camera or turn on one of those special high-end cameras, I should say, and stream. But Flip urged Joe to make the actual podcast capable of doing live shows. And Joe took his idea for Podsgiving after Flip had launched Improper Improv. It also turns out that he suggested the idea for Podsgiving. Could it be that maybe Flip wanted to do Podsgiving under the Improper Improv banner and Joe usurped it and did it the way he wanted to? Who knows? And then towards the end of this, the discussion about Melissa Ford and Flip Show premiering at the same time comes up again. Now, I don't know if this is real because I don't think Flip and Melissa Ford's show audience will really clash. I actually think Melissa Ford is in an uphill battle because yes, she's on the Joe Budden network, but her content doesn't appeal to the 90% male audience that Joe Budden has. But you know who does? Queens Flip. So I don't see them really competing, but it is fascinating timing. And both of these co-hosts are just trying to get their thing going for fourth quarter. I think Melissa Ford is headed for a flop, and I actually have an idea as to what she should do to save herself from the embarrassment of her podcast failure. Flip then says Joe is not accepting his loan return, and this loan has been a storyline since Flip's arrival. If you don't remember, Flip had issues with the IRS. I guess maybe he wasn't filing money or profit on his taxes, and the IRS came calling and got him for back taxes. Well, Flip needed a bail, and Joe would give it to him. But this would be something that would come up over and over and lead to many issues for Flip at the network, because that money was tied to some type of raise that Joe was giving him. And it was like the money would be given, but there was no contractual obligations for the money to be given. So Flip started to do Improper Improv for the free skis. Well, not really for the free skis. He was getting compensated, but it wasn't clear why he was getting compensated.
So when I got see, people keep talking about, yo, you got a raise. Come on, what do you think the raise was for? Use your fucking senses. And not giving me a raise. What the fuck you think a raise is? And I do something and it's good. Why the fuck and how would I get a raise, you fucking c***s? Of course it give me a raise, nigga. You're just lit. And we getting donations off of your fucking idea. So that's why they're like, are you asking for a raise? You know, you kids. I got the raise after Improper Improv. Obviously, the chip was doing good. So when Improper Improv stopped, the numbers was high. And I was telling Ian, like, what are you doing? He called me like, yo, bro, we have to go back to the contract. Hey, what? Just keep it this way. So he said, yo, nah, like sign an amendment. Now, here's what it is. People said that when Ian said sign the amendment, that I didn't know what an amendment meant. But people don't understand that the amendment conversation, not with me, but before, an amendment came with a fucking extension. Even though Ian didn't say that on the phone, that's what I had in my mind. So when I flipped out, it's like, I'm not signing an amendment? Because I'm thinking that the amendment is attached with the extension.
And then Joe would withdraw that and say that Flip needed to add an amendment. But it caused a lot of confusion, not just for the audience, but for Flip himself. So that's something we're going to have to see how it plays out. But what we do know is that Flip has a 10-episode order of improper improv that premieres on October 30th. Finally, then Flip reveals that Melissa Ford pressed him about using her to promote his Patreon. This is in reference to a tweet where Flip said that he would reveal what him and Melissa Ford actually argued about, where that incident where he almost got suspended. Now, Flip did use Melissa Ford's name to promote his Patreon, and it's interesting because I think he kind of needs it. I feel like Flip's Patreon doesn't really do crazy numbers. Like, you look at the engagement for his Patreon, it's not a lot of crazy comments. Like, Joe be having like 1,000 comments, and Flip be having like 5 or 10. So, I guess he probably should promote it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think Flip is an algorithm god, but when it comes to people paying for his content, he doesn't really pull it off like Joe does. And before I go, I wanted to close the loop I said about Melissa Ford earlier. I said that her podcast is destined for failure, and I had a solution. Now, I'm going to be honest, the solution came from someone on Twitter called Caleb, and he has his own YouTube channel, and what he suggested I thought was genius. He was noting how Damaris from the new Rory and Mal podcast launched her own channel, and she's not doing the podcast. She's doing lifestyle content. She's doing blogs, makeup. Hey, this is what I ate. And I truly believe that this is the exact same thing that Melissa Ford should be emulating. Hell, Melissa Ford already stole ideas from some other people, so why not Damaris, who's a much better podcaster than she is? And I think the ceiling has been reached in the industry for podcasting. Podcasting, I believe, also costs a lot more than actually just cutting on a camera and, just filming yourself. All Melissa Ford has to do is buy an expensive camera one time, spend, $2,000 or less, buy the mic setup, get yourself a little Rode mic, and it's already a lot cheaper than podcasting. Podcasting, every time you book a studio, it's minimum $1,000. You're going to be spending $1,000 every time. So if you do 50 episodes, you probably spent $50,000. Let's say $25,000. So Melissa Ford has a team. She needs to cut that team immediately. Why does Melissa Ford have a team helping her make a podcast? Just doesn't make sense. And I think she should copy Damaris. Well, that's this episode in a nutshell. Remember, it dropped today on October 28th, and it's called We're Civilized Now. It's a really good Patreon episode, and a lot of it is done in jest. I think you can kind of see through that jest and realize that some of those narratives are indeed true. But let me know what you think in the comments. What do you think about Joe's rights with the rest of the cast? Do you feel like he's getting over on them? And even if he isn't getting over on them, is he playing a dangerous game by making it seem like he has them in a podcast 360? What we do know is that Mandy accused Joe of putting her in a podcast 360.
What there was to be offered wasn't enough for where we were. What works for Joe does not work for two women newly into this space, and right. Joe doesn't like advertising dollars. And okay, so we're just gonna wait for the $1 million ad buy.
Rory and Mal accused Joe of putting them in a podcast 360.
Just show the accounting. I'll shut forever. I'll apologize on my platform for calling you a thief. I'll apologize on my platform for calling you a liar. Show the accounting.
So maybe Joe is actually the label now. I mean, it's a narrative that's old as time, but if so many people are saying it, there must be some validity to it. All right, y'all, leave it in the comments. Follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.
This fine video was brought to you by Danny from The Stop on behalf of Stop Productions. If you liked the video, please hit the like button, comment, or subscribe. Additionally, The thank you button has been enabled. If you want to say thanks, just say thanks on the thank you button. Any donations are greatly appreciated. Danny from the Stop.